Everyone, and thanks for joining us on the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. On the program this week, we'll be reviewing the Trump impeachment trial, which began and ended in a matter of days, and which ended with the Senate falling short of the majority needed to convict America's former president. Foreign policy analyst Calvin Dark will be joining us to discuss the outcome. Then we'll check into the political crisis in Haiti, a country with an estimated population of 11.4 million people and the most populous country in the Caribbean and the first independent black nation in the world. People want the president to step down, as it seems he's trying to change the constitution and adjust his term limit. We'll be talking to the country's former foreign minister, who is also ambassador to the United States and permanent representative to the Organization of American States, Ambassador Botchit Edmond, to get better understanding of the situation in his country. But first, a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles, and we'll be right back.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has hailed the country delivering more than 15 million first doses of COVID-19 vaccine, fueling calls for the government to start relaxing far-reaching lockdown measures.
We have reached a significant milestone in the United Kingdom's national vaccination programme. On the 8th of December, just after 6:30 in the morning, this country's first coronavirus jab was delivered safely into the arms of Margaret Keenan at University Hospital in Coventry. In the following 2 months, this country has achieved an extraordinary feat, administering a total of 15 million jabs into the arms of some of the most vulnerable people in the country. Those vaccines have been delivered in our NHS hospitals, in GP surgeries and high street pharmacies, in cathedrals, churches, mosques and temples, in community centres, and in living rooms in cities, towns and villages across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
China has cautioned the United States to hold itself to the highest standards and support the work of the World Health Organization with real actions. The remarks were made in response to a U.S. official's claim that the country's re-engaging the WHO means holding it to the highest standards and questioning some ongoing work of the WHO. China claims what the United States has done in recent years has severely undermined multilateral institutions, including the WHO, and gravely damaged international cooperation on fighting COVID-19. "15 Turkish sailors kidnapped last month by pirates in the Gulf of Guinea have arrived back in Turkey and reunited with their families. The Liberian-flagged container ship, the Mozart, was headed to Cape Town from Lagos when it was attacked off Sao Tome Island.
Welcome back. The impeachment trial of former U.S. President Donald Trump over his role in inciting the riots at the Capitol building on January 6th is finally over. It wrapped up on Saturday. Hours of arguments and presentation of never-before-seen videos from that day and emergence of new facts that Mr. Donald Trump did nothing to stop the rioters all ended on Saturday, with the former president being acquitted as the Senate fell short of the two-thirds majority needed to convict him over the insurrection. They voted 57 to 43, falling short of the 67 votes required for his conviction. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell speak about the vote and his own thoughts on the whole process.
That President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president. And having that belief was a foreseeable consequence of the growing crescendo of false statements, conspiracy theories, and reckless hyperbole, which the defeated president kept shouting into the largest megaphone on planet Earth. With police officers bleeding and broken glass covering Capitol floors, he kept repeating election lies and praising the criminals. If President Trump were still in office, I would have carefully considered whether the House managers proved their specific charge. By the strict criminal standard, the president's speech probably was not incitement. However, in the context of impeachment, the Senate might have decided this was acceptable shorthand for the reckless actions that preceded the riot. But in this case, the question is moot because former President Trump is constitutionally not eligible for conviction.
But to the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, and the impeachment managers, Republicans will have to live with acquitting Trump.
What we saw in that Senate today was a cowardly group of Republicans who apparently have no options because they were afraid to defend their job, respect the institution in which they served.
If you listen to Mitch McConnell and the Republicans who are now hurriedly explaining why they voted not to convict, all of them are hinging it on a legal argument, jurisdictional or some other legal argument that could never be overcome by any number of witnesses. We could have had 5,000 witnesses and Mitch McConnell would be making the same speech because what he's asserting is that the Senate never has jurisdiction over a former president.
I want to bring in now international affairs analyst Calvin Dark. He's in Washington. Calvin, great to see you. And a pretty interesting turn of events on Saturday. The former president has thanked his defense team, whom we heard earlier this week. This week that he lambasted, once again calling this impeachment trial a witch hunt. He's been impeached twice, but not convicted. How impactful is Saturday's victory on him and the Republican Party?
Well, you know, one of the things that kind of surprised me over the last couple of days is, you know, ever since this trial began, there were a lot of people on both sides wondering, you know, why even pursue it? Because there was never a chance where we thought he would actually be convicted, but a really good argument was made about accountability and holding him accountable for what happened on January the 6th. And as expected, when he was acquitted for the second time, he said it was like everything else that was against him. It was a hoax. And, you know, he even hinted to that he might be making an announcement soon as to what his next plans will be. But here's what happened that I wasn't expecting. This actually really damaged him with the Republican Party. You know, Donald Trump was famous for saying he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and his supporters would still be with him. He still has a lot of support. But the fact that this impeachment included 7 Republican senators and that none of the people that voted to acquit him voted to acquit him because he didn't do anything wrong. They were all on constitutional grounds. And so I kind of believe what some Republican strategists have been saying, that he actually now can't feasibly be a candidate in the future. So this really did damage him.
Indeed, but this was an unprecedented trial. And at some point on Saturday, there was consideration for witnesses to be called in. And for a while there, we saw both sides break up to hold discussions on this. We also heard Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, for the first time acknowledging openly that Trump was responsible for inciting the riots and also acknowledging that Joe Biden won the election. But he did not support the conviction of the former president. As he says, the end result, according to the Constitution, and you rightly point out, is removal. You know, at the end of the day, removal from office. But according to him, this was an effort in futility, which is not the case in this scenario. President Trump had already left office before, you know, the trial began. But Saturday's outcome, however, can be attributed to him, since he was still House Majority Leader when the order for impeachment was filed. So does he bear some responsibility in this and the results that were produced on Saturday?
Yes. First, just let me address the, the first point quickly about the, in the morning here, we were going to have witnesses, and that passed for them to allow witnesses. And then there was an agreement where they wouldn't have, but the president's team allowed the testimony in of what Trump had said, that he really didn't care what was going on during the Capitol, all of that. I think that was a mistake. Now, you're going to hear a lot of Democrats say that it was because why continue on pursuing witnesses that would have taken weeks, and we knew that it wouldn't have gotten any more Republican votes. But here's the thing. They knew they weren't going to have the Republican votes in the beginning. So if they're going to use that reasoning, they shouldn't have pursued the impeachment anyway. I think they should have, because we need accountability. But I understand why they didn't, because they also realized that we have a new president with an agenda that needs to get through the Senate. So that's kind of what's going on behind the Democrats. Now for Mitch McConnell. Here's the thing with Mitch McConnell. I don't know when he's being genuine. I've yet to see that. I can tell you that what he definitely is very politically astute, because here's what he realized, and this is what I think happened yesterday. When it comes to history, because keep in mind, he was just reelected, so he has 6 years before he would have to answer to the voters. History will record his vote of supporting the Republican president of his party. The news cycle will support him in his the speech after, where he blamed the president. But people aren't going to remember that. History is going to remember how he voted, and he understands that. So I don't put much behind what Mitch McConnell said. What he said was different than his vote. His vote is what matters. What he said after it is so that people look favorably on him for the next 2 weeks.
And I want to talk a bit about, the House impeachment managers, Jamie Raskin and the others, who put up a really strong argument against the former president, and what sort of precedent this sets. I mean, a president impeached twice but not convicted. What sort of precedent is it setting for America in the future?
Well, I think the two things about that. One, while I'm disappointed that the Democratic House managers did not pursue more witnesses, I congratulate them on the job that they did, Representative Plaskett and Raskin and others. And I remember thinking they could not have put on a better and more clear case. The evidence was convincing, so they deserve credit for that. But the second point leads to what you were saying, is I also remember thinking, like last night after trying to digest everything that happened, I said, what can we now impeach a president for? Not only with this impeachment, but with the prior one, because here's the thing. If you are on the opposite party of Donald Trump, say a Democrat, in 10 years, and a president does something, what can they do worse than what he was accused of that would make people say, well, now this is when we're going to impeach and remove? So I think that's one of the long-term challenges that all of this has brought upon us, is I think impeachment is useless, because we've seen now there's a really high bar for what that could include to be removed from office.
Finally, Calvin, I want to talk about the message this sends out to the rest of the world about America's democracy and its democratic process. And people around the world did watch the impeachment proceedings from Tuesday. How do you think the outcome of the trial contrasts or compares with the makeover of America's image the Biden administration has been trying to do?
Well, I've got to say that, my background is, I'm a very proud American. I've spent a lot of time abroad, a lot of time on the African continent, and I'm a political scientist at heart. And I've spent a long time talking about ways to promote democracy and using the way my country promoted it as part of that justification. And so I've had to talk to a lot of friends around the world, specifically around the African continent, about what does this mean about the United States being an example of democracy. And one of the things that I think is that now with this trial that is over, we do have a lot to do to repair our image abroad after the Trump administration. But I think that this actually backs up a lot of what America has said over the last 100, 200 years. And here's why. Despite all that President Trump did, despite all of the support that he had for nearly half of this country and half of the Congress, we had an election. We had a change of power, despite a riot at the Capitol, despite a president who was commander-in-chief and did everything he could, including extortion and intimidation, to try to change it. We have a new president. Democracy can work, and that it did here, even though we tried a lot against it.
We'll leave it at that, Calvin. Thanks again for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you.
And when we return after the break, we'll be delving more into the political crisis in Haiti. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's turn our attention now to Haiti, otherwise known as the Republic of Haiti. a country located on the island of Hispaniola in the greater archipelago of the Caribbean Sea, and best known as the first independent black nation in the world. Right now, the country is going through a political crisis. President Juvenile Moyes was elected to a 5-year term in 2016, but did not take office until 2017. It's now time for him to go, but he insists his term did not begin until 2017, so he is therefore entitled to remain in power until February 2022. People are very unhappy about this, and they turned their anger into anti-government protests led by opposition groups in the capital, Port-au-Prince. Demonstrators have been clashing with police, resulting in the arrest of at least 20 people, including a Supreme Court judge for allegedly trying to topple the government. The arrests come after the leading opposition figures last week announced plans to replace President Moyes with a new head of state, accusing the president of being authoritarian and presiding over economic chaos. The opposition plan called for members of civil society and opposition leaders to pick a new president from one of the sitting Supreme Court judges instead of waiting for general elections scheduled for September. The United States has intervened, calling on both sides, the opposition and the government, to resolve the crisis with dialogue, while insisting a new elected president should succeed President Moyes when his term ends on February 2nd, 2022. Moyes himself has put in place plans to hold a referendum on amending the Constitution in April this year, with the opposition voicing concerns that it will not be free or fair and could give Moyes too much power. Haiti has been badly damaged by a crippling economic crisis that has been made worse by the coronavirus pandemic. Crime has risen over the past year, with regular kidnappings taking place. I want to bring in now the country's former foreign minister and current ambassador to the United States, who is also Haiti's permanent representative to the Organization of American States, the OAS, Ambassador Bochit Edmond. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you and your audience.
Ambassador, let's begin with an understanding of what is going on in Haiti. Was President Juvenile Moyes legitimately elected into office?
Yes, indeed. He was legitimately elected. As a matter of fact, he went to election twice. He won both of them because there was a first election in 2015 that was annulled, and there was another one in November 2016, organized by the interim president then, and he won that election. And the final results of those elections were proclaimed in January 2017, and he sworn in on February 7th, 2017 for 5 years. Therefore, his term will be ended on February 7, 2022. There is no discussion on this.
Oh, but the political crisis stems from the fact that he was elected in 2016. So why did he not assume the position then?
Because there was an interim president, and that interim president, where there was an argument for him to stay in office all the way to February 2017, when he will have to give power to the elected president in November 2016. So he couldn't get power because he couldn't go and grab the power. He had to wait until he was sworn in office in February 17. Because now you cannot ask, now the allegations or the argument my brothers and sisters from the opposition they are putting forward is because elections started in 2016, therefore the president term started in 2016 as well. At the same time, when there was a president at the presidential palace then. So, all those confusions, unfortunately, we are facing in the current constitution. This is one of the reasons we are focusing, trying to have a new constitution, as 87% of the population requested.
To the rest of the world, Ambassador, this looks like a pretty straightforward situation. An elected leader decides he wants to be able to serve his legitimate 5 years in office. So why is the opposition questioning the constitutionality of this?
Because they never did that before for the last 4 years, since they have been unsuccessful in trying to topple that president from day one. Everything they tried didn't work, but now they are, trying to grab the last argument, the last one, and using the constitution. which is unfortunate. But I know, we know, and the international community know, and our international partners know because they were there observing those elections then, and they know the term of a president according to the same constitution is 5 years, 60 months. And last Sunday, February 7, President Moyes turned 48 months in office. Therefore, he has 12 months, 12 more to go, though there is no discussion on that.
And Haiti is the first independent black nation, but its economy has been doing very poorly. What's the reason for the perpetual poverty among the people?
Listen, I would say, two quick answers. I would say that mismanagement for many years before. And then I believe the second thing would be the political stability. Because ever since 1986, when Baby Doc left, we are experiencing certainly democracy, but we have to recognize there's been some challenging times when it comes to political stability, because, after 86, when Baby Doc left, President Moyes should have been the 7th president. But you know what? Now he's the 20th president, meaning there is something is not working here. So because of so many interim presidents, interim governments, therefore it has been very difficult and to even attract foreign and direct investment, because the national economy itself cannot. We have to have foreign and direct investment in Haiti so we can create more jobs, create more wealth, so life of the people could be much better.
You have armed groups who could take advantage or who are already taking advantage of the protests to perpetrate, more crime. Now, apart from that, you also have the police cracking down on every form of protests and the people's right to protest. How is the government really protecting people and protecting property? And could you explain more about the recurrent political crisis in the country?
Yeah, because we never been able to respect, whenever a president is elected, to respect his term in office. We always want a president to leave before his term, and so we have traditional government, and transition sometimes is much better for a lot of people, particularly those who cannot be elected. But let me clarify something. The national police never stop people exercising their rights to protest. There is always protests, and they have the right to protest as long as it is peaceful. But when some protesters started to burn people's property, to burn down people's property, and to do violent things, the police would have to step in. And this is the way it is in every country, in every society.
What do you make, Ambassador, of the Biden administration throwing its support behind President Moyes and calling for peaceful transition in 2022? It's almost as if he's ignoring the opposition and, their own concerns about the government.
But listen, this is not a matter of ignoring. It's a matter of, logic. The president, they know, everybody knows, the international community knows, our international partners know. The president was elected for 5 years. They know. Therefore, the fact that they are not asking, as the opposition is asking, for the president to leave office in 2021, that doesn't mean that they are ignoring them, because they don't have a case. The case is a legitimate president who was elected for 5 years. He just turned 48 months, 4 years in office. Therefore, he has 1 more year to go. And they understand, because those people understand, the only way to lead the country, the only way to get power is to go through elections. We cannot continue in Haiti to have that cycle of transition and governance. It is not good for our democracy. We have a legitimate president in office. He is determined to hold elections, free, fair, and transparent elections, under the observation of international communities, as will be done. Therefore, he will continue to do so, and the international community understands that. They are supporting the principle of respect of democracy. This is elections. That's the only way to go and get power.
Master Budget Edmund, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
It has been a pleasure to be with you, and I wish you the best. Thank you.
And that's the program this week. Thanks again for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Remember, You can catch up with the episodes you have missed on channelstv.com. I'll see you next time.